And speaking of reality, the other day it was mentioned, as we all know, that if we put yeast and water together, no chemical reaction takes place, but when we add the ingredient sugar to them, they merge together and froth and bubble, and when you add it to flour, it becomes dough with the potential of becoming bread, etc. So let's see what happens when we add two stories together. One you can call yeast and the other water, and it will be up to you to decide which is the yeast and which is the water. But when we add the sugar to it, we'll experience for ourselves what it is that happens. Now, the first story is about that seeker after truth, the young man who read all the books which pointed him in the way that truth was to be found. Many, many tomes he read, and one of those books said that you really can't find truth until you find a spiritual master to guide you. So he went out and bought a book on how to find a spiritual master, their appearance, attributes and qualities. And then he started research on how he could find the spiritual master, and he chose one amongst the numerous ones that he found listed, and he set out on his quest to be in the presence of this master. But the devil caught wind of what he was doing and decided to try to deter him from finding this spiritual master. So on the way, while the young man was staying at an inn and the lusty barmaid made eyes at him, he remembered what the book said, don't succumb to evil. And so the devil was thwarted. And when he came along and he spent a night at a farmhouse, and the farmer thought he was a very fine young, strong-looking man, and invited him to come and work for him. No, don't yield to the temptation of making money, and so the devil was thwarted again. So finally the young man came to the address which the master was located, and he entered into the hall where there were a number of people gathered around. Well, of course, the devil was not able to enter the doorway of this illustrious master, so he had to stay on the threshold watching what was going on. So the young man entered and joined the throng of people that were gathered there, but he couldn't see which one was the master. But then he noticed that attention was being given to a man who sat there smoking a cigarette and wearing a black t-shirt saying "Ban the bomb." And so he realized that this must be the master. But when he was the master was just sitting there making idle conversation with those who were sitting around him. So the young man was thinking himself, well, and he doesn't tick any of the boxes about what the book said about what a master is at all, and the master didn't give him any attention at all. So after some while, the young man decided that he must be terribly, terribly mistaken, and so he got up. But of course, as we know, the master who was there was quite well aware of the devil standing on his threshold. So when the young man got up to take his leave and walked out the door, the master looked up from the group of people that he was talking to and addressed himself to the devil standing outside the door, and he said to him, "You need not have worried. He belonged to you all along." The second story is about a thief who had been keeping watch on the house of an old woman not far from his own house. It was a small village, who, of course, you know, the rumors are that old crones keep money stashed away somewhere in their houses. So he was eyeing off this old woman's house, waiting for the opportunity that he could go and maybe find something worthwhile to steal from her. So one night, when he felt that the time was right, he crept up to the window of the old woman, looking inside to see if she was fast asleep and would not be disturbed when he entered the window. When he heard the sound of her tossing and turning in her cot, which was just at the end of the room in which he was looking, and she was muttering in her sleep, "Oh, this terrible Dib-Dib, this terrible Dib-Dib." And then she would wail, "Oh, this Dib-Dib will be the death of me." Well, as the thief was looking in the window, he was thinking to himself, "Oh my gosh, this Dib-Dib, oh, I breathe the air that the old woman's been breathing. Maybe I've got the terrible Dib-Dib." So he had to go off home, didn't he? And when he staggered in the door of his wife said, what's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? And the thief said, "I think I've caught the terrible Dib-Dib." So he staggered to his bed, and he lay on his bed, and his wife was tending to him. He had a very high fever, and his wife didn't know what she was going to do for him. "What am I going to do for him? This fatal Dib-Dib has got him." So, of course, she had recourse to the local priest. So she decided that she would go and seek his assistance to come and see if he could help her husband. So the priest was called and stood by the bed of the thief and asked him what, and the thief said, "Oh, I've caught the terrible Dib-Dib. I think I'm going to die." And he described where he'd been. "Oh," said the priest, "let me see what I can do for you with the powers that have been granted to me." So he went off to the old woman's house, and as the thief did, he stood at the window, and there was the old woman lying on her bed, wailing, "This terrible Dib-Dib will be the death of me. Oh, Dib-Dib, oh, Dib-Dib." So just at that moment, the priest dropped his beads on the ground, which clattered and woke the old woman from her sleep. And she accosted the priest, and she said to him, "How dare you, a man of the faith, creeping up on an old woman in the middle of the night?" The priest drew himself up to his full height and said, "I heard that you were suffering from the terrible Dib-Dib, so I came with my powers to see if I could do anything for you." "Dib-Dib," she said, "you stupid. I thought you were an intelligent being with faith. There, look, there's your Dib-Dib." And over in the corner was the tap, dripping, going dib, 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 dib. So the priest, of course, very ashamed, effaced, abashed, as you can imagine, had to gather himself together, which he did, as they can tend to do, and went off back to the house of the thief, who was lying in his bed, almost leaving this world. His fever was so high, and he was feeling so dreadful. And the priest came up to his side, and the thief looked up. "What are you doing here? You left me in my time of..." "Wait," said the priest. "I was researching what it was that I could do for you, and I have found the cure." And he asked the wife to bring a glass of water. And when she brought the glass of water, he waved his hand over the glass and muttered a few words and said, "Here, drink this and you will be cured." So the thief drank the water and immediately felt better, even though he really didn't have that much faith in the priest. But it worked, and within a short space of time he was feeling quite fine again. But you know, the thief never went around and told the story to anyone. For what reason, we could ask ourselves. And the priest never did, because he was afraid that the old woman, because she was really the town gossip too, would hear about it and give her version of the story. And of course, the old woman kept quiet about it because she was waiting for an opportunity when she could have a one-up on the priest. And that opportunity hadn't arisen as yet. But the story's still out there, as we well know, so somebody must have told it. So, when we put these two stories together, adding the sugar, which makes the immersion froth and bubble, what is it that arises for us as the difference or the similarity between them? Or the sameness? When they merge in us, what do they bring up for us? This awareness.
I think that with the first story, it just really implies how this truth seeker, he never really was able to seek a truth after all, because in searching for a master, it was what he searched for couldn't be defined, because a master could be anybody. This is what really struck me, and he was just looking for something which wasn't there, or wasn't what he appeared to be, so he assumed that it didn't exist.
And the second story?
Second story. Too easy to believe that this thief, he believed that the dip was a fatal disease, where it was just a dripping tap because the old woman didn't sleep. Just shows how easy it is to believe something which is far stretched from the truth.
So is that a similarity between the stories or not?
I suppose you can call it a similarity, although there's definitely some other differences.
Okay.
Similarity probably is two false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
Similarity lies in the perception.
Yes. Yes.
And the truth is, of course, beyond perception,
Right.
given what the mind can perceive anyway.
Yes.
So it would be the expectation of what it is or how it works, kind of,
Yes.
which is illusionary.
Illusion. And the sugar. What is this sugar that we bring into all the polarities of life? The yeast and the water of life, to allow us to make this froth and bubble that has no potential. When added to the flour of self. To make dough can be baked by any particular store. Be the food, the bread that they eat.
I see you get the awareness.
Yes, awareness. The sugar also. Did anyone go to the gym? What's it? What is this sugar?
I wouldn't call it myself, but I would say it's possibly the inclination to see past truth or past even awareness
Mhm.
itself, because there has to be a state which is reached where you just don't acknowledge it once you've passed it.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking for truth is just like looking to touch a cloud. It's hard, if not impossible, to do.
Okay, it's very good. Good for you to tune. Thank you.